Namaskar, Anyam Hasanika. This is Sonu Trivedi welcoming you all to this special lecture on working of the Indian Constitution, which we have organized today on the special occasion of the Constitution Day of India. Friends, let me at the outset share that 26th November every year is celebrated as the Samvidhan Divas to honor the adoption of the Constitution of India when in 1949, the members of the Constituent Assembly met for the first time, for the last time, in fact, that was the 11th session of the Constituent Assembly and agreed to adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution, which came into effect from 26 January 1950. The Assembly met once again on 24 January 1950 when the members appended their signatures on the Constitution of India. On that day, when the Constitution was being signed, it was drizzling outside and it was interpreted as a sign of a very good omen. Along with this proud moment, when this ancient land attained its rightful and honored place in the world, we also remember this day for the unconstitutional and dastardly act of horror committed on the innocent lives in 2008 for the Mumbai terror attacks, a day etched in our collective memory. We all stand united in remembering the victims of 26/11 and seeking justice. Friends, later, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment on 19th November 2015 notified the decision of Government of India to celebrate the 26th day of November every year as the Constitution Day to promote constitutional values among its citizens. On this occasion, yesterday we conducted a special quiz on Know Your Constitution for the children of Indian diaspora in Republic of Korea. And today we are before you with a very special lecture on the working of Indian Constitution, organized in association with Institute of Indian Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies and the Department of Political Science at Zakir Husain Delhi College, University of Delhi. We are truly privileged to have amongst us Professor Vidhu Chakravarti, who is the Vice Chancellor at Vishwa Bharati Shantiniketan, and Professor Chanman Kim, who is the Director of the Institute of Indian Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, who have graciously agreed to deliver the special lecture today, along with the presence of Her Excellency Shri Priya Ranganathan, Ambassador of India to Republic of Korea, and Professor Sangeeta Pandita, who is the principal of Zakir Husain Delhi College, University of Delhi. Friends, the entire proceeding is also being live streamed on our social media handles. You may share or go back to them for any future reference. Friends, before we begin the proceedings, let me call upon Ambassador Her Excellency Shri Priya Ranganathan to deliver the congratulatory remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Namaste, good afternoon, friends. Professor Vidhu Chakravarti, Vice Chancellor of Vishwa Bharati University, Professor Chanman Kim, Director of the Institute of Indian Studies, Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, Professor Sangeeta Pandita, Principal of the Zakir Husain College of the University of Delhi, my colleagues at the Embassy of India in Seoul and Indian Cultural Center in Seoul, researchers, students, friends of India, and friends of the India-ROK relationship who are present with us here today. Good afternoon and Annyeong Shimnika to all of you. This is, as Sonu has already mentioned, a very special day in the journey of India as a nation, the day that we celebrate the bedrock of our nationhood, the bedrock of the polity, the bedrock of all that we have achieved thus far, and that is the Constitution. The principles and the philosophy of the Indian Constitution are really extraordinary, not only by way of the larger vision and scope with which they are for which they are very well known, but also for the manner in which they really have reflected the requirements and the priorities of the people of India. And for this reason, we recognize and celebrate this day as a very, very special day in our history. This year in particular, this is one of a series of activities and events that we attach special importance to, since this is the year when we celebrate the 75th year of India's journey for as an independent nation. This is what we are marking as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, or the 75th year of our independence. And within the scope of these celebrations, I think what we are doing today to mark the Samvidhan Divas has a very, very central role. I'm sure that our discussions today will help us to not only understand the basic tenets of the Indian Constitution, but the manner in which this Constitution has evolved and in fact kept pace with the evolution of the Indian nation, and at the same time held firm to the ideals on the basis of which our great nation was founded. So I look forward to the conversations and the addresses by some of the very, very, very qualified persons who are speaking to us today. And I hope that this will give us an opportunity to also see what are the manners in which this forms yet another strand in the India ROK partnership, which we have been the tapestry of which we have been weaving over time. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to the conversation to follow. Dhanyavad. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you, ma'am, for your remarks and also for initiating the discussion. And I'm sure with the collaboration of Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, we have Professor Kim here, and also from Zakir Husain College, we have our principal joining us. So I'm sure we will be able to have some exchange of thoughts, not only exchange of thoughts, but along with that, also maybe we will work on some educational exchange and exchange of students and faculty maybe in the future if it works out. With this, we now call upon Professor Sangeeta Pandita, who is the principal of Zakir Husain Delhi College, to give her remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sonu, and a very bright good morning to all present in the meeting. This is a very, very special meeting, and I'm really very happy to be part of this whole meeting. It's indeed a moment of great joy to be amongst you all today and remember the historic day when our constitution was finalized and eventually presented to the nation. Now it's really a matter of joy to be among the galaxy of people, and I'm I got to know we are waiting for very, very beautiful lectures on the way. We'll be looking forward to listening to all. And to be truly, it is a joyous moment for me also to be part of this moment, which is, remembering the historic day when our constitution was presented to the nation. And I cannot say, it's difficult to fathom the emotions of the people at the forefront at that time, because it was an overwhelming moment in history, come through several trials and travails, the kind of, the kind of attention they gave to so much detail, so much diversity we have. It has all found place in this constitution. It is historic, phenomenal in many ways. And that everything this democracy encompasses has been enshrined in the sacred document, painstakingly, handwritten over 2 years. And it still stays with us. So modern India, we all know, stands as one of the most diverse countries in the world, of languages, religions, ethnicities, and so on. We have so much of diversity, and we have really evolved over the last 70 years. We borrowed initially from many countries, but then we evolved so beautifully, and today many countries are looking towards us as a very successful situation that we are right now. And I think we have a responsibility, each one of us has a responsibility also to continuously sort of contribute to the evolution of this particular secret topic. And I'm quite happy. I was listening to Sonu and others before me. I'm very happy at the kind of activities that you have organized to mark this day, a beautiful day. wonderful activities like quiz and other things. And it's wonderful to be a part of this now. I think must thank you everybody for being present here in this occasion to celebrate. It is a celebratory, it's an utsav kind of a thing. So we must joyously participate in it, and also remember that we all have a function and a role to play in enhancing it and in the evolutionary process of our constitution. Thank you so much, and wish you a wonderful day and session.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words of wisdom and also encouraging us on this very important day. With this, may I now call upon my colleague at Zakir Husain Delhi College, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, who is now the teacher in charge of the Department of Political Science, to formally introduce the speakers. Over to you, Dr. Sanjeev.
Thank you, Dr. Sonu Trivedi, and welcome all the guests here. Her Excellency Sri Priya Ranganathan, Ambassador of India to Republic of Korea, respected Professor Sangeeta Pandita, our principal at Zakir Husain Delhi College, chief speakers for the day, Professor Vidyut Chakravarti, Professor Changwon Kim, and of course, my dear colleague, Dr. Sonu Trivedi, who is also the director at the center there. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, AWAM, and our collaborative partner, Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, and the Institute of Indian Studies, Hankuk University, I welcome you all to this very important session to celebrate the 71st anniversary of the Constitution of India. Just yesterday in the college, we had an opportunity of engaging the students, on a live mode. And today we are here, to have a very important session on the theme, Working of Indian Constitution. And it is an extremely privileged moment for me to be here to introduce our very eminent scholars for the day today. Professor Vidyut Chakravarti is a Vice Chancellor of the illustrious Vishwabharati University in West Bengal. He was professor in the Department of Political Science in University of Delhi till recently, 2018. Let me share on a personal note. I had the good fortune of learning from his wisdom, both as a student in the year 2000, and thereafter in 2018, I got an opportunity from him to teach a master's course in the department on Gandhi. The little I have gained on Gandhian philosophy, I must admit, is the result of his constant motivation, support, and encouragement. Professor Vidyut Chakravarti obtained his PhD from the London School of Economics and Political Science. He's a prolific writer with many books published by globally reputed publishers. He's an authority in public administration, as we all know. He's widely cited for his original contribution to Gandhi's social political philosophy. His books on the ideas of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Is a celebrated work. His books on coalition politics has received accolades for its distinctive approach to the phenomena of Indian politics. He has a large number of articles published in the referred academic journals with high impact factors. We know that he has taught in several prestigious institutions such as the London School of Economics, Indian Institute of Management at Calcutta, Monash University, Australia, National University of Singapore, Hamburg University, Germany. There are many that I can go on and go on speaking about him, but the paucity of time constrain me to stop here. Another very luminary scholar we have today, Professor Changwon Kim. He's a professor at the Department of Indian and Asian Studies, Graduate School of International and Area Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. He's also the director of the Institute of Indian Studies, HUFS Korea. He's editor-in-chief of two journals, Journal of South Asian Studies and Journal of Indian and Asian Studies. Professor Kim is the author of numerous books and articles on Indian and South Asian studies. He got 3 times Hof's Excellence in Research Award in 2017, 18, and 20. Professor Kim has gained over 48 MA and 16 PhD students on Indian studies. He has been an alumnus of Delhi University, if I'm not wrong. He also has established a Korean-style Gandhi Ashram at the Center of Indian Humanities for general public in Korea. He has been the president of Association of Humanities Korea. He plays a very active role in advising ministries and agencies of Korean government, including Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Justice, presidential committees on new southern policies. It's indeed a privilege to have both of you today. Thank you so much for being a part of this great session today. We look forward to hearing you both. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sonu.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for that introduction about our speakers. I'm sure our renowned speakers will dwell upon the ideas and ideals enshrined in the Constitution of India, which is a living document and has been amended several times since 1951, when it was done for the first time, and has stood the test of the time up till now. We'll also get to understand, I'm sure we'll get to understand the leading debates in the Constituent Assembly, which reflects upon a tussle between several competing visions, from the social democratic vision of Nehru and the liberal democratic Ambedkarite, to the non-modernist quasi-communitarian vision of Gandhi, to those represented by persons such as K.T. Shah, which was radically egalitarian and came closest to the vision of the left, and the right-wing view, which now has come to be popularly known as the Hindutva ideology. How the articulation of these visions have been wisely synchronized in this unique document is what we look forward to. I'm sure our experts will also reflect upon the achievements and the challenges of the working of this democratic constitution and how its citizens have worked upon it. And as the leading constitutional expert, Granville Austin, says, and I quote, constitutions, however living, are inert. They do not work. In fact, they are worked upon. With these words, may I now call upon Professor Chanwan Kim to give his special address. Over to you, Professor Kim.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Soros. Okay, let me share my PowerPoint with you. All right, I'm so happy to deliver my experience to learn about Indian Constitution with all of you. Especially, I'm really happy, to say this with the Professor P.D. Chakrabarty. In fact, I learned, under him when I was the MA students in the Department of, Political Science, Delhi University. So, Professor Sanjeev Kumar, you're right. Yeah. All right. Since we do not have enough time, let me share my experience and my lesson, from Indian constitutions. Okay. So first, I briefly share the preamble of Indian Constitution with overview. Yeah, of course, every Indians, I'm sure, very much knows about preamble, but let us remind again. Then second topic, when I was, Delhi University, I was really surprised at how could India consolidate, democratic system. Certainly because of Indian wonderful constitution, India could consolidate the democracy. That is great lesson for me and for Korea. And second thing is how to cooperate between central government and state government. That is one of my major impression from Indian constitution. Then nowadays there are a lot of the critics on Indian liberal democracy system. So let me share that result. Okay, if you look at the Indian preamble, Constitution of India, they say that we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign and socialist and secular democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, and equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nations. So especially when you look at the preamble, really I was impressed, especially the justice and equality, how India tried to achieve the justice, how India tried to achieve the equalities. So same thing when you discuss about consolidation of democracy. When I was in students in Department of Political Science, we learned that the consolidation of democracy system, theories. According to that theory, if a newly independent country is not, developed properly in terms of economy, educational standard, it's quite difficult, to consolidate your democratic systems. But in India, if you look at the Indians, when India achieved independence in 1947, India, one of the poorest country in the world, okay, same as Korea, of course. And then in terms of economic education standard, it's quite low. But India successfully consolidated its democracy system, unlike Korea's. So my first question was that, how could India consolidate its democracy system, unlike Korea? And Korea also achieved independence just after, Second World War, 1945. But unfortunately, we failed to consolidate our democracy system in initial stages. Only, later in 1980s, probably the early 90s, we could have a civilian government. For a long time, we have, dictatorship or authoritarian regimes. So it means we failed to consolidate our democracy system. However, India successfully, consolidated the democracy system. I try to think how India could establish, proper democracy system. Certainly, because of a thoughtful constitution in terms of justice and equality, and democracy constitution that caring the peoples. If you ask me what is the best example, behind that, certainly I would say the job reservation for the SC/STs. If you look at the Korean histories, most of the Korean ruling elite, they didn't concern the weaker section of society in Korea. Unfortunately, they only concerned their own interest, their own right. They hardly concern, such a weaker section of society like, India's SC/ST. But fortunately, the founding father of Indian Constitution caring such a weaker section of society like SC/STs. That's why I believe that India could consolidate the democracy system in the initial stage, unlike Korea's, without having authoritarianism, without having such dictatorships like Korea's. So as you know that one of the main purpose of job reservation is to provide adequate representation of all class, especially caste in the government service. However, in Korea, we do not have this kind of, proper, representations in, Korean, society, especially in government service. So because of that, unfortunately here in Korea, we do not have, rule of the people's mechanism for a long time. But beautifully, India, had rule of people's mechanisms, because of, a democratic constitution. That is one of my best lesson from Indian constitution, I would say. Then second thing, I would share my best lesson from Indian constitution is cooperative federalism. even though India is a federal state with military bias, so-called quasi-federal, such as if you look at the element of the quasi-federal, such as residual subject are left with the unions. Even in the matters in the concurrent list belong to central government. But there are a lot of corporate federalism feature you can find. Indian federal system not only stands for distribution of power between national and state regional government, it also desires sincere cooperation between two sets of political organizations. So from this point, when you look at the corporate federalism, intergovernmental level cooperation in different fields is one of the most significant aspects of Indian federalism, I would say. So one of the main best example from this corporate federalism, I may take Damodar Valley Corporation. Maybe you may not know, but really I got a great impression from Damodar Valley Corporation. This Damodar Valley Corporation started even before the independence between central government and state government of West Bengal and Bihar, today's Jharkhand. Jharkhand. But there are a lot of conflict, among the, between the West Bengal and Bihar to share, Damodar, rivers. But because of central government's involvement in the, spirit of, corporate federalism, Damodar Valley Corporation successfully, existence, in 1948. So now this is one of the best example in terms of corporate federalism, I would say. And another best example you can find in terms of corporate federalism in India is certainly financial corporations. When you look at the Korean history, many people found that we have so terrible regional conflict, especially between Jeolla province and Gyeongsang province. For a long time, almost 70 years, people of Korea suffer from regional conflict because the Korean central government didn't care of cooperative spirit between central government with or regional government or local government. And especially when you look at the financial cooperation, most of the finance assistance went to the a certain province, that is Gyeongsang province. Jeolla province hardly gets support from central government. As a result, there are huge regional conflict here in Korea. So of course nowadays, because of a young generation, because of civilian government, somehow regional conflict had been decreased, but still regional conflict in Korea exists. But if you had such a financial cooperation between central government and regional government in Korea, somehow we could achieve the beautiful regional imbalance, but we couldn't. But in India, even though there are 29 states, of course today is 28 states, but because of financial cooperation, I found that there are less regional conflict in India, unlike Korea. Of course, there are regional imbalance, especially between the west side of India and east side of India. But I found that there are not so serious regional conflicts such as Korea is. So I think because of corporate financial, financial cooperation between central government and state government, India could enjoy less regional conflict, unlike Korea. That is my second lesson, I would say. But nowadays, unfortunately, a search for democracy of India that caring the people has been challenged, especially on the issue of civil liberty. According to many data, especially to EIU, which said that democratic, backslide, in India by authority and crackdown on civil liberty had been further declined in India. And if you look at the Freedom House index also, India's civil liberty has been declined in recent years. So I would say it is really high time to think again the philosophy of founding fathers of the Indian constitution. If you look at the data, for example, in democracy index, India's region top flow to the democracies. If you look at the index, especially from 2019, has been declines. Okay, so many people worry about who are support to India liberal democracy system. Very much worry about recent decline of democratic index of India's. Of course, you may say this is certainly a Western perception, Western index. Of course, I do believe that this certainly is the Western index, but still we have to think about why and how India's democratic index has been declined in recent years in terms of civil liberty and political right. And another index, so-called global, freedom score also has been declined, compared to, a couple of years ago. Today's India statute records the partly freeze. Of course, before that there was a freeze. Okay, India has been free country, but now India statute is partly freeze. So this even the Freedom House worry about India's civil liberties, okay? Which Indian constitution very much support the civil liberty since in the beginnings. And then when you discuss about quality of democracy, India's classification is the hybrid regimes. When you discuss about hybrid regimes, certainly is this is the between moderate autocracy and deficient democracies. So it means that many Western institute like EIU and Freedom House concern the recent development of Indian democratic process. So when you look at today's index, you may recall to the founding father of Indian constitutions, who are emphasized on justice, equality, and liberties and fairness, all these things. I do believe that India has a great potential and opportunity to recover such a previous status after some time, but today certainly this is in fact we are facing while we are celebrating the Indian Constitution Day. So as I told you, when I learned the Indian Constitution, I got a great impression on the founding father of Indian Constitution, who were concerned and take care of people, providing job reservation to the weaker section of society, and concern the regional was or the local government's problem by having cooperative federalism. This kind of thing would not happens in Korea. But however, in India, provide great, history such a development. So now I feel very much sorry that we do not have this kind of, the values because of the problem of the civil liberty and political right. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Professor Kim, for your insights. In fact, that was a great learning experience for all of us. And you have very aptly also shared about the Korean experience, the societal conflict, the regional conflict that you have between some of the provinces, as you have just explained about Jeolla province and Gyeongyang province of Korea. So I'm sure there are some learning experiences from India. I'm sure we all will agree that even in India, we still have some challenges so far as the regional conflicts are concerned, but we are trying to manage them to the best possible manner. And I'm sure even for India, there are many lessons to be learned, which maybe it can come up in the Q&A round. Since I'm staying in Korea, based on my personal experience, I see how developed the urban system and the local self-government that you have. There are many more lessons to be learned from your country, in fact. So now let's move forward, and we now move to the special address by Professor Bidyu Chakrabarty. Over to you, sir.
Shukriya ji, Sangeet ji, namaskar. And I appreciate my two bright students, Sonu and Sanjeev, and Kim. You know, I salute you because I'll tell you a very interesting story how I met Kim in Seoul. I was traveling in a tube in an underground train, and suddenly Kim discovered me. And then, I met him in a restaurant, and he really fed me well. So Kim, I remember, that lunch even today. So this time I am sure we'll have many more lunches like that. And I can see many of my students, from Delhi University, because of association of Zakir Husain College. And I still consider myself to be part of Delhi University, though I am located elsewhere. First of all, I just would like to begin. I'm a teacher. That part is very critical. That's ingrained in me. So as a teacher, I just would like to start with some critical observations, which are necessary, I think, at this point of time. First of all, I'm an old-fashioned teacher, so I don't believe in PowerPoints. My reason is very simple, because nowadays I see the PowerPoints is a kind of conspiratorial design to stop people thinking originally. Because the moment you have PowerPoint in front of you, you tend to read those PowerPoints, and your thought process is revolve around those PowerPoints. So you really not allowed to think afresh, because in the class, I'm sure Sanjeev, Sonu, and those who teach, they agree that in the classroom, when we prepare, but when we teach, sometimes we come up with new ideas. I mean, that was the main very interesting and exciting part of class teaching. So I'm not presenting any PowerPoint. I'll just talk. I'd like to have a dialogue on the basis of certain important themes. And secondly, I just request Sonu that we are talking about the Constitution, and the Constitution talks about a free mindset. But when Sonu introduced the theme, she referred to Grenville Austin as a kind of big constitution expert. Yes, I agree. I also learned a lot from Grenville Austin. But there are many Indian authors, indigenous authors, who made substantial contribution, and they made Grenville Austin. So I think I request Sonu to understand our intellectual tradition at the same time. I'm not saying that be xenophobic, because we learn a lot from the Western sources and discourses. But at the same time, please do not ignore, the sources which we have produced, the text which we have produced. And Grenville Austin would not have become Grenville Austin had he not, read the assembly debates where our thinkers or illustrious constitution makers would not have intervened. So I think, Sonu, please keep that in mind in due course. Otherwise, constitution will just become a document comprising several articles. The constitution is also an attempt to develop a mindset, and that mindset needs to be strengthened, reinforced only by nurturing a specific kind of thinking. So that's my kind of advice, or if you are still consider me to be a teacher, my instruction. Now, let me begin with the point raised by my friend Dr. Kim. Kim talked about, last slide is about flawed democracy. I'm not very comfortable with this kind of description. And to me, Kim, since you also was my student, so I have got the right to say things what I feel internally. Kim appears to have really misunderstood the Constitution, and his understanding of the Constitution is based on Western sources. That is a kind of, that's probably part of his misconception or flawed conception of Indian democracy. Now, I'm just trying to explain things conceptually, so probably you will have more sources to enlighten yourself. If I had a chance, probably I would have focused on that in detail. When you talk of Indian democracy, start with John Stuart Mill. Now, John Stuart Mill apprehended, and he made it very clear in his book on representative democracy, that a country which is culturally heterogeneous will not have democracy. So to have democracy, you have to have socio-cultural homogeneity. Now, the implication is that when no country with heterogeneous socio-cultural texture will have democracy. So from that point of view, India cannot be a democratic country because it's socio-culturally diverse. We are not united in terms of language, we're not united in terms of culture, we're not united in terms of food habit, we're not united in terms of dress. So, we are so diverse. So as far as Mill was concerned, John Stuart Mill, India democracy should not have survived, but we are continuing as a democracy. Then second important text I would like you to read, S.M. Lipset, The Political Man. And there you'll find he also raised this kind of doubt. He wrote in the 1950s. He said Indian democracy will not survive. India was likely to be balkanized. That was the kind of source which was reinforced by even that diplomat who came to America. I'm forgetting. India is an anarchic democracy. J.K. Galbraith. J.K. Galbraith wrote a book, India, Anarchic Democracy. So, there are many approaches to understand Indian democracy, and most of the Western scholars, they do not know India. They do not know the reality. They do not understand the reality. It is quite possible because to know India, you need several lives. It's very difficult to understand one life. For that matter, any country. If I go to Korea and if after having spent 3 years, if Sonu writes something very, very special, Sonu will certainly have missed certain important dimension, which I'll get from Dr. Kim. So, so that part is very, important to remember, that Indian democracy needs to be understood with reference to Indian social, cultural, and political reality. So there is something which probably strengthen Indian democratic binding over a period of time. And for the want of better words, I would explain it in terms of unity, in terms of civilizational ethos. That's something important. Again, it contains many things: social, cultural, political, economic, which developed over centuries. So this is very important kind of I would say cementing factor which brings Indian together. That's why democracy survived. That's why democracy cannot be flawed. And secondly, when you think of flawed democracy, you have a very fixed definition of democracy. And from that angle, you are saying because India does not fit in to the the acceptable conceptual democracy, so India is not a democratic country. Now I am posing a counter question. America is not a democratic country till 1965 because America did not introduce adult suffrage. Till 1965, 12% of the American population, African American population, did not have votes. But we don't talk about it. We still say America is the oldest democracy. No, India is the oldest democracy because we introduced adult suffrage as early as 1952. So I think, I mean, in that, from your understanding of democracy, America was a flawed democracy till 1965. Even the issues which are talking about civil rights movement, the immigrants in the United States are subject to all kinds of, harassment. So I think the index which is prepared by the Western worlds, they are flawed. So I think, as India, I'm not saying that I am, pampering the call of the so-called Hindutva brigade. No, not at all. But I'm simply saying, as an academic, we should look at the socio-cultural milieu to have a right kind of perspective. I'm saying mine is the truthful account of the Indian situation. No, nothing can be truthful in social science. No, everything is provisional. But we'd like to defend things with reference to text, evidence, and other kind of references which will support us to defend one kind of proposition. So this is the theme which I'd like to talk about. If I am allowed to take this argument a little further, even today, you will see there is a massive campaign all over the globe. Black Life Matters, right? That's an important kind of campaign going on. So that means what? John Freud, the way he was killed by the Americans, so that also means that a section of the people of America, they do not enjoy civil rights in so far as as their white counterparts enjoy. So I think the index or the data which you have provided needs to be taken with not pinch of salt, but bucket full of salt. That's my understanding. That they produce data in accordance with their understanding of India, and I think their understanding of India is flawed simply because it is difficult to understand India by just making 2, 3, 4 visits and by talking to those who are intellectually survived to the Western discourses. I'm not saying that I am opposed to Western discourse. I learned a lot from Western discourse. I am a Western product of Western education system. I got my PhD. I taught there. I studied there. But at the same time, I never lost touch with my reality. I mean, I follow Gandhi, that I would like to open all the windows all the windows so that air flows inside me. But I will be very careful so that I should not be uprooted from the room with the flow of air. It's a metaphor whereby he said that I'm exposed to all kinds of values, all kinds of knowledges. But at the same time, I should be rooted in my own system of thinking, because this is what I am. This is what I am. I cannot learn Korean system of thinking by simply staying there for 3 years. I'm sure Sonu will not have the capacity to understand Korea, the capacity which you have. This is the natural way of argument. So, don't think that I'm trying to project one ideological preference. I'm simply trying to understand things as an academic. And as an academic, and at this age, because I am at the fag end of my career and fag end of my life. So at this stage, if I don't say things clearly, categorically, then I think who will say it and when I will say it. So please keep that in mind, that I would like to say things so that your perspective changes. I mean, I'm not saying that you just listen to me uncritically. No, don't do that. You try to have an idea coming from various sources. That's my point. As an academic, that is our task. Right? Now, you talked about the Constitution. I'll not talk about the Constitution per se, because that's that's a kind of cliched document. Everybody, I'm sure, we have been listening to the Constitution preamble, so many parts, etc., etc. But I'm not talking about the Constitution per se. I'm talking about certain. I'm talking about things which are less known, which are less visible. I'm just acting as a kind of medical doctor, and as a medical doctor, the doctor dissect, and then doctor repairs, many things internally, and then doctor said, I have done the surgery. But when he does the surgery, we don't know what he did. So that way, I'm trying to act as a doctor. I'll try to dissect, to do a surgery of the Constitution of India. Okay, so that's my, the first or the basic assumption. Now, I'd like to bring to your notice some things, some important aspects of the making of the Constitution. Most of us know that this Constitution, the idea of making a Constitution was not indigenous. The idea of making the 1950 Constitution was the idea of the cabinet mission. But again, I'll say it with qualification. There are many indigenous sources. If you look at 1928 Motilal Nehru report, Nehru Constitution, if you look at Ambedkar's witness before the Southborough Committee in 1928, if you look at Ambedkar's intervention in the round table conferences, if you look at Sapru Committee report 1945, so there are many indigenous sources. But if you think of 1950 Constitution, which incorporated these indigenous inputs, but at the same time, the idea of making the 1950 Constitution came from the cabinet mission. It is the British initiative. And then the Constituent Assembly was constituted. Here too, the Constituent Assembly was constituted by the elected representative of provincial legislative assemblies. And these elected representatives were elected on the basis of 1935 Government of India Act. So those who were members of the Constituent Assembly, they were not democratically elected, because election at that point of time was based on property qualification and educational qualification. So it was not a democratic body, but they were entrusted with the duty of making a democratic constitution. Okay. Now here I can counter this, but in fact Ambedkar was asked this question, he responded, I am reiterating the idea which Ambedkar put forward, that look at American Constitution. 13 constituent independent states form the United States of America and form the Constitution of 1789. And each state had 2 representatives, so 26 people. But mainly the Federalist groups, Jefferson, Alexander, and Howe, they prepared the Constitution. So from that angle, the oldest democratic constitution was also prepared by a minority. So this minority prepared the constitution for a democratic state. So I think in case of India, if that argument is put forward, we can counter it easily. Right? Nonetheless, the fact remains that this particular constitution was made by the cabinet, was suggested by the cabinet mission. Now here, I just would like to add another small dimension. Now we talk about Ambedkar being the architect of the constitution. But here, I am just, not questioning, but I am, disputing the claim by adding certain other information. Now Ambedkar was not elected to the Provincial Legislative Assembly of Bombay. He lost the election. By virtue of being a lost candidate, he was not allowed to become part of the Constituent Assembly. At that point of time, Gandhiji intervened, and Gandhiji asked a Bengali Dalit leader, Jogendra Mondal, to step down, to resign. And in Jogendra Mondal's constituency, Barasat in West Bengal, he contested and he won. And then by virtue of winning the election, he became part of the Constituent Assembly. One. The second information, which is not known, that when the drafting committee chairperson, that discussion came up, Nehru, being heavily tilted in favor of the white-skinned people, suggested the name of Professor Ivor Jennings. Those who are the student of political science, they know of him. Ivor Jennings was an expert in law, and he was a professor of law in Oxford University. Now, here again, Gandhiji intervened. Gandhiji said that we have Ambedkar, make him the chairman of the drafting committee. And it was done. Now then, there is a kind of misconception that when you say Ambedkar is the architect of the constitution, we tend to suggest that it was he who drafted the constitution. Again, that's wrong. The constitution was drafted by an ICS officer who is little known, but he also wrote extensively on the making of the constitution. He also, even Grenville Austin, quoted his text extensively. This gentleman drafted the constitution. His name is Sir B.N. Rao, Benegal Narasimham Rao. Now, Sir Benegal Rao drafted the constitution, the entire draft, and gave it to Dr. Ambedkar because he was the chairperson of the drafting committee. Another information. Now, drafting committee is a committee. Now, if Sangeeta ji claims that I run the college, I think she's making a wrong claim. If I say I am running Vishwabharati, I am making a wrong claim, because I am helped and supported by my colleagues. I am helped, supported by my administrative staff. So it's a collective venture, just like Sangeeta ji also will agree with me. So drafting committee comprises 6 illustrious legal minds. Who are they? I have got the name of all of them. You know about K. Munshi, Muhammad Sahadullah, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Gopal Iyengar, Gopala Swami Iyengar, G.S. Iyengar, N. Madhava Rao. Now, N. Madhava Rao was a replacement of B.L. Mitter because he was unwell then. So he resigned, and N. Madhava Rao was recruited. And then in the middle of the discussion, D.P. Khaitan, he represented the business community. He also died. So we had T.T. Krishnamacharya. Now, if you look at the biography of these illustrious legal minds, you'll find they're all well known in their fields, one, and secondly, they're all trained in England. Now, these two important information is very important because that has impact on the nature of the constitution. Now, so I set the kind of, what is called the foundation of my speech. As I said at the outset, I'll not talk about the constitution per se, but I'd like to focus on certain unknown items. Now, the second question is another important dimension. I don't know how many of you know about it, whether how many of you had seen the original constitution kept in the Central Hall of Indian Parliament. I don't know how many of you have seen it. I mean, I have seen it because the 2 copies were made. The first copy was kept in the Central Hall Parliament, and the second copy is in our possession, Vishwabharati. Why? Simply because when constitution was being made, they thought that we should produce a constitution artistically. So there was a tender calling, national tender calling. And most of the artists gave high quotations. They charged hefty amount of money to present constitution artistically. But we had an artist who was Gandhi's disciple, artist, the name is Sri Nandalal Bose. Sri Nandalal Bose agreed to do it free of cost. And because he liked Gandhi, and because Gandhi came to Vishwa Bharati several times, so he knew him personally. Here Gandhi, I don't know, I don't have any evidence, but I'm sure Gandhi played a critical role in asking the Nehru and those who really were critical vis-a-vis the constitution to invite Nandalal Bose. And Nandalal Bose did it free of cost. Now this information is important because I don't know, as I said, I don't know how many of you saw the original constitution, handwritten constitution, signed by all the members of the constitution. Each chapter has a painting. And if you look at the paintings, it starts with the seal of Indus Valley civilization, the first chapter part. Then it went on to elaborate Indian history till the freedom struggle, medieval India, then modern India, all one painting according to Nandalal Bose's his own understanding. Okay, and the last three parts are very critical. The last three parts, first is a painting of desert. The second is the painting of Himalayas. And the third part, there is a painting of sea, Samudra. Now, my question is, why did he do that? Now, first thing which comes out very clear, that whether you talk about desert, whether you talk about Himalayas, whether you talk about sea, they represent one thing. They represent the idea of being boundaryless. If you go to a desert, you don't see the boundary. If you see Himalayas, you don't see the boundary. Yes, conceptually you can, but you don't see it in your own eyes. And sea, it's also boundaryless. So, conceptually, to me, Nandalal Bose understood the aim of the constitution. As a result, he finished the constitution chapter with that painting of sea. Now, sea means two things. One, boundaryless. One is confluence. Because, all seas are connected. Seas are connected with the rivers. So, connectivity is something which probably Nandalal Bose wanted to convey by putting a painting of sea. And you'll find different colors. And each sea has got different colors. So that reinforces my point. An artist like Nandalal Bose wanted to convey that this constitution is boundaryless, one, and secondly, this constitution talks about togetherness, fraternity. In Hindi, bhaichara, hamdardi. So, these are all unknown items, unknown things. Now, then I'm coming to the philosophical foundation of the Constitution. Now, when you talk of the philosophical foundation of the Constitution, I find there are two important points which need critical appreciation or critical explanation. The first is I call it ethics. The Constitution draws its sustenance from ethics. And this particular part was added later. But if you look at the debates and if you read in between the lines of the Constitution makers, then you'll understand that they were closely intimated with the idea of ethics. The idea of ethics now is included in our constitution, Article 51A, which incorporates duties. This particular article was added in 1976. Before that, the constitution only talks about rights. But rights and duties are dialectically interconnected. So if you look at the debates, you'll find this idea of duties, which were added in 1976, were there. So my purpose today of talking about the constitution is about ethics. Now, when you talk of ethics, I find it has got two components, and they are critically linked. They are interlinked very, very closely. What is this? The first one is the philosophy of enlightenment, Western discourse. And the second part is indigenous discourse. Now, that part we tend to forget. Now, if I talk about it at length, then people will immediately label me with one particular political group. I'm not associated with any particular group. I'm saying it as an academic. And I'll show you. And if you read the debates, then you will understand my point very, very clearly. The first part, enlightenment, is understandable. As I said at the beginning, those who made the constitution, those who are part of the assembly, they are mostly trained in Britain. And generally, 80% of them were lawyers. They got training in law. All them. Gandhiji himself, Nehru, Patel, G.B. Pant, Rajagopalachari, Mohan Azad. I mean, just name them. Most of them. Krishnamachari, T.T. Krishnamachari, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Gopalaswamy Iyengar, all Nazimuddin, Kashikant Moitra, Renuka Roy. I mean, just name them, 80%, I can tell you. So as a result, they imbibe the enlightenment spirit. Now, when you talk of enlightenment, I see three types of enlightenment: British enlightenment, French enlightenment, and American enlightenment. And these three enlightenments are creatively blended in our constitution, simply because those who made it were influenced by these three complementary types of enlightenments. British enlightenment. Now, British enlightenment, we have, I can talk about it for hours, but I don't want to waste your time. But I just would like to, summarize. I summarize it in terms of 3 C's. If you look at British Enlightenment text, starting from John Locke, via Herbert Spencer, Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, they represented the Enlightenment tradition. And if you look at the text, their main focus is on 3 C's: care, concern, and compassion. So Enlightenment philosophy, British Enlightenment philosophy, is based on these 3 human attributes: care, concern, and compassion. So basically, Enlightenment philosophy in Britain, but when Enlightenment philosophy came to India, it's a different kind of texture. That's why there is a big fight between Asiatic Society of Bengal and those who supported Macaulay. That's a different history altogether. Sir William Jones versus Macaulay. It's a big fight. That's a different history altogether. But this enlightenment of British variety was based on care, compassion, and concern. To this was added the French Enlightenment ideas. If you look at the text written by Voltaire and Rousseau, then you'll find they agree with 3 C's, but at the same time, they say that humanity or human beings, they undergo changes pretty easily. And the king, the ruler, not always become benevolent. The ruler can be brutal. 16th Louis, So 16th Louis was totally degraded to become a dictator. So they added what I call the idea of skepticism, the idea of doubt. So French Enlightenment to me added the idea of doubt. And that is also reflected, I'll show you, that is also reflected in the debates. And then finally, American Enlightenment. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, one of the main architects of the American Constitution in collaboration with James Madison. And if you look at Thomas Jefferson's intervention, you'll find he talks the three important coinages of the American constitutions were Thomas Jefferson's creation: liberty, equality, and fraternity. So now you take them together: British Enlightenment, French Enlightenment, and American Enlightenment. And if you read the text, the constitution makers' debates, intervention, they are reflective of these three Enlightenment traditions. Now then the second question comes to be the indigenous source of inspiration. Now Indians, as I said at the outset, Indians are Indians. And the moment we are born and raised in this environment, we are born or we are nurtured in a tradition in which the traditional texts become very critical in our upbringing. Probably we don't read Upanishad, we don't read Vedas, but there are certain practices which are available in those texts, are ingrained in us. We become religious. When we go out of our house, we tend to bow down before any deity, or we just tend to do pranam. So this is something what respect. And when you talk about Upanishad, I find three important ideas which are contained in the constitution. And these ideas didn't come very clearly in their debates. They didn't talk about Upanishad, they didn't talk about Vedas. But they said, we have come here to listen to sitar. We have to come here to listen to veena. But here we are given British band. So, there are, you have to read in between lines to find out. As I said, I'm now working as a surgeon. I'm dissecting. So, this idea, the Upanishadic ideas are ingrained. And if we have any question, I can, show you exactly in the debates. Now, what are those three important ideas? Very critical. The first idea, which I find in Ishopanishad. Again, it's a detailed thing. I'm just drawing upon the summary. If you look at Ishopanishad, the crux of Ishopanishad is that Yatra Visham Bhavati Ek Nidam. Atra Visham Bhavati Ek Nidam. What does it mean? It means this is the place where need, it's like a nest. And in the nest, we are all together. Now here, they didn't talk about Indians. They didn't talk about nationalities. They're talking about humanity. And according to them, humanity knows no boundary. And that's very evident if you look at the text of the Constitution. The second idea, which is widely quoted, everybody knows about it, that comes from Kathopanishad. The idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Now, this is also implicit in the Constitution. And the third idea is Teno Takteno Bhunjita. This is also Kathopanishad. What does it mean? I mean, I give you a very worldly example. Look at our mother. Now, mother sacrifices everything for her children. And mother draws satisfaction out of that, even at her own cost. So, by giving up, by abdicating worldly comfort, mother draws pleasure. So, that's true everywhere. In us, we have that habit of giving up for those who are really distressed, those who are, disempowered, those who are disenfranchised. And in India, they knew well that it is a poor country. Even today, 34% of our population live below poverty line, means they don't get 2 meals a day. So I think the Constitution is not simply a document. Constitution is about a philosophy. The Constitution contains wisdom, prajna. And that prajna comes out of these two important sources. Then another idea, which again is very much based on Western discourses, the idea of constitutional morality. A constitution succeeds not because the police system, not because of coercive power, because how many people you can put in jail, how many of the criminals can be just hanged, unless and until you generate the idea of compliance to the provision of the constitutions, you cannot think of the success of the constitution. Now, this particular idea is very much Western idea. I'll talk about it a little later when we talk about Ambedkar. So, if you take my discussion in a summary form, I try to establish the idea that the constitutional philosophical basis is based on both Western and indigenous discourses. When you talk about the Western, it is ethics, enlightenment theory. When I talk about indigenous, we are talking about Upanishad in particular. Because Vedas, is very difficult to decode Vedas, and Upanishad. Now there are many, 108 Upanishads, but 17 Upanishads are considered to be very balanced commentary on the Vedas. And when you talk of the constitution, I find reflection of Ishopanishad and Kathopanishad, one or two, the first one or two. So indigenous and then constitutional morality, that's also part of the Western discourses. Now, then question the flawed democracy part. I mean, I'll take it, now initially I questioned, but now I am drawing his attention to another aspect, to reinforce the idea that probably they also had that apprehension. The democracy that was about to come on the basis of this constitution was not likely to survive. Here I would like to draw attention, and I expect all of you to go to Google and read this text, which is easily available, the last speech of B.R. Ambedkar, 25th of November 1949. Now this speech is about 18 pages. I'm not asking you to read 18 pages, but I'm just trying to summarize the whole argument which he puts forward. The moment Constitution was made, and the Constitution was made on the 26th of November 1949, and it was made operational in 1950, 26th of January. Now, here I am adding a dimension. Supriya ji probably may not agree. I believe that India was not made free on 15th August 1947. India was politically free, but if you look at the constitutional status of India, India was not free, because Indian governance was guided by British Parliament. On 26th of January 1950, till 26th of January 1950, India was governed by a Governor General, C. Rajagopalacharya. And that Governor General was appointed not by Indian Parliament, but by the Queen. So politically, yes, we became free in 1947, 15th August. But constitutionally, we became independent on the 26th of January 1950. So it's not 75th year of the independence celebration we should do, but it's the 72nd or 71st celebration. Anyway, that's debatable because we started with our own cabinet, though the head of the state, Governor General, was still appointed by the Queen of England. So constitutionally, we are not free. We are not independent. Politically, yes, I agree. So this part, then now I come to the speech by Ambedkar. And that's very critical, I'm telling you. Because once the constitution was made, Ambedkar started his speech with a statement that I am happy and upset at the same time. I am happy and upset at the same time. And he said, I am happy because we put 3 years of hard work, almost 3 years of hard work, and we got the constitution. So our hard work resulted in the making of the constitution. So I am very happy. I am upset. Why? Because I am upset to think or to visualize whether this constitution will survive or not. Now I am linking Kim's concern, whether democracy will survive in India or not. Ambedkar's answer was in the negative. The first point he said, the lack of constitutional morality. Now, this constitutional morality idea, he got from a famous Greek history of Greece, famous historian of Greece, an Englishman, George Grote, G-R-O-T-E. And George Grote's question was, why did democracy survive in Greece for 300 years? And his outcome was that they developed what is called constitutional morality. What does it mean? It simply means compliance to the institutional instruction, compliance to the instructions given in various provisions, compliance with the established rules and regulations. I'm sure Madam Sangeeta suffers on that account because the students tend not to obey the rules and regulations. दादागिरी यहाँ पे भी ऐसा ही हो रहा है. Everywhere they are not bothered about the rules and regulations because we lack constitutional morality. That's one point. The second point he asked, because we lack constitutional morality, we tend to destroy the established institutional structure. And he said that we destroyed this by indulging in civil disobedience. He used the word civil disobedience. Now here I find that he was actually attacking Gandhi. But Gandhi used to resort to civil disobedience, to disturb the system of administration then. I mean, he had a political purpose, and I appreciate that. Probably I would have also participated in the civil disobedience then. But Ambedkar was a constitutionalist, and Ambedkar, that never ever participated in the constitution in the nationalist campaign. When 42 movement was going on, he was member of the Viceroy Council, because he always believed that this independence was a fake independence. This independence, until we eradicate the difference between untouchables and the caste Hindus, this constitution will not take us to a democratic state. So lack of constitutional morality, according to Gandhi, cannot avoid civil disobedience. Now, before the British, before India became free, it was the British Raj. So he believed that you had reasons to be part of civil disobedience. But once you make the constitution yourself, it is your moral obligation to abide by this constitution. So no civil disobedience. And that is possible only when you have strong constitutional morality. And the third point he mentioned, that so long as India is governed by Babadom, the role of the spiritual fathers, Indian democracy will not survive. Indira Gandhi was governed to a large extent by Dhirendra Brahmachari. Narasimha Rao was governed by Chandra Swami, Baba. And even today, the ministers take oath at a particular point of time as per the advice of the Babas, the so-called self-proclaimed spiritual gurus. So Ambedkar said, so long as this mindset survives in India, it is very difficult to have democracy. Now, India is the country which gave democracy to the world. Lichavi democracy, Buddha Sangh. These are all important examples of democratic governance. But India lost democracy. So now the situation has come, if we allow Babadom, then you cannot question the Baba, the great man. We tend to talk about great man. And if you become a great man or woman, you are above questions. In West Bengal, I'm giving the example of West Bengal. Nobody questions the Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. And there is a saying going on here that in the cabinet of Mamata Banerjee, there is only one post. And the other cabinet members are all lamp posts. So that means what? They really don't have any power, any authority. It is a CM who decides, because she is a great woman. Whatever she thinks must be good. It is, it is a little, fascistic tendency. But that is happening. And the Babas continue to remain critical in Indian democracy. I mean, I can give you innumerable examples. Why do you think a cabinet new minister take a particular time frame? Because that's auspicious. So this is the third point he makes, that so long as Babadom remains, we cannot have a perfect democracy. I'm little digressing to tell you another interesting story. Now, when Gandhiji was assassinated, Ambedkar wanted to see his dead body. His wife, the second wife, was a doctor, medical doctor. She was surprised that Mahatma was killed and he would like to see the dead body. At that time, he was suffering from high diabetes. So his doctor wife insisted that you should not go out. And those who live near Delhi University campus, now we have got Ambedkar Memorial Center. That is where he lived. From there, he wanted to go to build the house where Gandhi's body was kept. He went. But that time, nobody knew Ambedkar that way. So nobody gave any space. Ambedkar couldn't see the body. Came back in a very upsetting mood. And his wife asked, what happened? He said, I know I couldn't see the body. So that made him upset. And next day, the day of cremation, he again raised the demand that I would like to see the body of Gandhi to be put on the pyre. It is cremated. Now, Savitaji, his wife, was really perplexed. What has happened? It's madness. Mahatma Ji is no more, and you are insisting on his cremation. He went. Again, as you know, in husbands, they tend not to listen to wives' warning. So just like a patriarchal husband, he left, though he was very unwell. So he went to the cremation ghat near Jamuna, which is known as Rajghat now, and he saw the body being put on the pyre. He came back happily. He was very happy. Sabitaji really was surprised. What has happened to this man? Then he said, you may find it madness. And it's a long letter which he wrote. And the letter was written on the basis of his discussion with his wife. And his wife wrote this in Marathi. She wrote an autobiography in Marathi. And there she explained all this, which I am sharing with you. And there Ambedkar wrote, it's a long letter, so I cannot quote it. He said, with his death, Babadom will disappear from India and Indians will think rationally. Indians will think rationally. So, and then I also would like to add his, interview in the BBC in 1955, where he was criticizing Gandhi like anything. I don't want to go into that, but please, it's available in the Google search. You please listen to that interview. So this is the third reason. Now, fourth reason. He said, India, with the introduction of this constitution, we have introduced adult suffrage, universal franchise, which means political democracy. Whether you belong to an rich family, or a poor family, it doesn't matter. When it comes to election, you will have just one vote. One man, one vote, one woman, one vote. So we are politically democratic. But are we democratic economically? No. Because they are rich. Anil Ambani could give a helicopter to his wife. Anil Ambani can have a helipad on top of the house, 28-floor house. But think of the people. 1/3 of our population live below poverty line. They don't get 2 meals a day. So economic democracy is far away from us. So unless and until there is a kind of compatibility between political democracy and economic democracy, it's very difficult for this democracy, for this constitution to survive. Then the final reason, he said, India cannot be democratic at all so long as caste remains. So long as India is divided in terms of caste, we cannot be a society which will appreciate fraternity. Fraternity means what? Coming together. And Ambedkar's formula is endosmosis. And endosmosis is to be translated. He said the Brahmin bride should marry a Dalit groom and vice versa. Only then this endosmosis will take place, will be meaningfully implemented. So long as caste remains, it will not allow this constitution to take off. So Kim, it's a flawed democracy, not on the basis of what we are, the data which I have provided. But Ambedkar also warned us that the type of democracy he was thinking will not take off simply because of these inherent limitations of Indian society. Now, he was talking in 1949, but now situation has changed a lot, but not to the extent we expected or he would have expected. But it is changing. So that way, my concern is that instead of looking at India or the constitution or anything Indian from the Western prism. Let us devise a unique prism combining ideas from both the Western discourses and the indigenous discourses. I'm not exclusively for indigenous discourses. There are many limitations, I agree. But at the same time, I'll not disregard it. Because since we are nurtured in that tradition, we are nurtured in that environment, in that milieu, we are what we have been taught. You cannot ignore. I mean, you are product of Korean society. So you have got Korean vices as well as Korean qualities. Just like me. I've got Indian vices as well as the quality of being an Indian. So I think indigenous discourses are as important as the derivative discourses. So when you talk of the constitution, I think we should keep that in mind. Now finally, what is it that keeps the constitution going? Now in a nation, 75 years is too insignificant. It's too insignificant. Think of America. I told you, till 1965, the African Americans didn't have votes. And they had history of more than 200 years. And you know the way immigrants are subject to harassment. Still, they have a democratic constitution. So these are what is called hiccups in human society. So probably after 5,000, 10,000 years after the introduction of the constitution, things would move in that direction. So India, that has become free only for 75 years. This is too small, too brief a period to assess or to make a kind of final conclusion. Since I believe that the constitution is not merely a compilation of documents, constitution is a blueprint for future path. That's why I would end up by drawing your attention to the last picture, last part, a picture of in the last part of the constitution by Nandalal Bose, ocean. He painted an ocean and the watercolor is different, which is metaphorical in the sense that he wanted to show that India is not only boundaryless, or India is campaigning for a boundaryless universe, and at the same time, India is also a place, and the constitution is as an instrument to create that kind of space in which people of different class, different caste, different creed, different ethnicities come together so that it becomes a nest. It becomes a nest of people from various parts of the world. So the last punchline, this constitution is for humanity. This constitution is for humanism. This constitution is a stepping stone towards realizing universal humanism. Thank you very much for paying attention to my lecture. I don't know whether I crossed my time limit, but thank you very much, Sonu.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to hear from you, even if you have exceeded your time limit. In fact, all of us were your students at one point of time, and it was truly a delight for all of us to be a part of your another masterclass, I must say. And I'm sure all our colleagues and all our friends who have joined here would certainly agree to this. And since we have exceeded the time limit, I think we will just skip the Q&A round. And but once again, I would just like to convey special thanks to Professor Kim and Professor Chakravarti. You very aptly summarized the philosophy and ideas enshrined in the Constitution of India. Sir, in fact, it was really a unique opportunity for us to know more about the hidden facts given in the Indian Constitution, how you have shared your experience, particularly regarding the indigenous sources of the Indian Constitution, how the Motilal Nehru report and the Sapru Committee report, along with that, how the Upanishads, ideas from the Upanishads have shaped the main features of Indian Constitution. And in fact, your last words, where you said the picture of ocean painted by Nandlal Bose, and how he has talked about the boundaryless, how he imagines boundaryless India, and also the concept which you gave earlier about the confluence and the connectivity. In fact, I'm sure it would remain fresh in our minds. And I'm sure all the participants would also agree with your views. May I now request Dr. Sanjeev to give formal vote of thanks now?
Thank you, Dr. Sonu. It was indeed a great learning experience, I must say, listening to very eminent scholars, Professor Kim, and of course, Professor Vidyut Chakrabarti. Sir, we have greatly learned through the classroom discussions. And of course, today, the way you draw us close to learning of the ways in which we can, in some ways, we can get some insights into the making of the Constitution, and where you highlighted the rich sources that we can draw upon, the Enlightenment, and of course, the indigenous Indian tradition. I think that's where the focus of this lecture was. And I think for most of us, who have learned through the Western, education system, an emphasis on this will lead us to know more about the sources from where the whole process of this civilization, of course, in the debates, we talk about it, nation state versus civilization. And I, of course, tend to agree on this, that we are not a nation state in the strict sense of the term. And of course, we have a rich civilization, tracing back 1,000 years before any conception of Western modernity dawned on the earth. So in that sense, I think, sir, it was indeed a great experience. And of course, so far as the questions on the Constitution and the crisis that we are in, I think definitely there would be the questions, times changes, institutions also are shaped and reshaped, and yet we need to understand, as sir rightly said, that India's democracy is a early democracy, the beginning phase of the Indian democracy. We are not into a time where we can make judgment whether we have failed or are successful. Just as few years back when we were students, we used to be taught by people like Atul Kohli, and they said that India is a glaring example of successful democracy. And today there have been questions, So let's not be judgmental. And that's where I think Professor Vidyut Chakrabarti has asked us to ponder that, of course, there could be new questions, new challenges, and India has an answer to this. I think that's the important statement coming from Professor Vidyut Chakrabarti, that when we look at the composite culture, the civilizational legacy, the synergy of composite dialogue, I think those traditions have stood the test of time. And the Constitution has also, shown us the way. And of course, it is not just a Constitution, it's the legal document. It's the people who work the Constitution. It's we, the people of India, That's where the Constitution give us this right, to shape and reshape the Constitution. So in that sense, I think the task is before us, to see where India will sail, whether we see this as a crisis phase or we see this as an opportunity. And I think India has sailed all the movements, through time. And in the course of history, I think India's, examples, the way we have, shaped our civilization, is going to be an example. And therefore, in that context, I say that India is a democracy which has walked through crisis. We have at various phases, in post-independent era, So let's not be judgmental on the crisis that perhaps people are reflecting on, and that's a global crisis when you tend to see across the world, and democracy rightly is being questioned today, more so not just from Indian perspective, but at the global level you see there are crises. So thank you so much, sir. Both of you, in fact, Professor Kim highlighted the problems. He put us through certain data, and of course, we have to understand that the problems would be there, the challenges would be there, the answers will have to be brought through us only. And that is where I think India have drawn lessons from the past, and we are going to move forward, march forward, in the years to come. Thank you so much, both of you. And in particular, I'd like to thank Professor Kim, Professor Vidyut Chakravarti, the eminent scholars. You have taken your invaluable time, for for joining this session. I look forward to many more such engagements, where we not only us, but students, they are in great numbers today who have come and participated in this event. Because of the positive time, unfortunately, we are not able to have this question and answer round. But I'm thankful also to our principal, Professor Sangeeta Pandita, who has always been very kind in supporting our various initiatives, be it academic or extracurricular activities. Many scholars, distinguished scholars, colleagues, guests have joined this event, not just from the country, but abroad also. We thank you all for joining the discussion today. We have truly benefited from the rich discussion that followed through this lecture. And for this, I thank all the participants and, of course, the speakers, key speakers today. Much of the pain in organizing this initiative has been taken by our collaborative partners, Swami Vivekananda Culture Center and the Institute of Indian Studies, Hankuk University. I must thank Dr. Sonu Trivedi for the opportunity extended to us. We look forward to have many more associations in near future. She has been a colleague in the department and has been working hard, in Seoul, and from the college and from our college fraternity, we extend a warm thank to you, and of course to all the participants here, to all the students, and we look forward to have you in the near future. Thank you all. Thank you, Sonu. Thank you, Vidyut sir. It was nice, meeting you again, and Professor King. Hope to see you, in the near future. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you to all the participants for joining us and being here with us throughout the session. We could not take the question answer because we have already exceeded the time limit. But I'm sure in near future we will get an opportunity to interact with our speakers on any other new theme that we have another lecture on. Thank you all.